Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and we're going to look at some more recent sales on eBay for CGC-Graded key issue comics. And for a few of these, I did pull up the GoCollect data just to kind of compare as to where that it sold on eBay here recently versus what was in my mind as the fair market value for the book. And I think a lot of these, not all of them, but a lot of these do prove that in auctions, you can oftentimes, if there's a certain book that you're looking for, oftentimes these auctions close well below fair market value. So I just wanted to kind of go through some recent sales. And as always, thanks for watching the channel. We're going to start off with some mid-grade key issues for Wolverine. And his first cameo appearance is Hulk number 180. Obviously, that's pretty well known at this point, but this is a mid-grade book, 8.5 off-white to white pages, and that one sold for $761, and that was just off-white, off-white pages. And to me, this is about the grade that I would look for it right now. I don't think I'd really want like an investment grade level book, but an 8.5 to a 9.0, I'd probably hold off and try to at least get off-white to white pages or even white pages. But this was a very nice copy. It presents a lot nicer than an 8.5 in my opinion. And obviously his first full appearance is Hulk 181, where he's on the cover. It's a great cover. This was a 6.5 off-white pages that sold for $29.55, and then this was an 8.5 off-white pages that sold for $4,500. So pretty decent deal on that off-white pager, especially. I had an 8.5 that was a white pager that I think I sold around, I think it was around 5,000 or 5,500 earlier this year, and this book has kind of been hovering in that range. So I think for an off-white pager, you're going to get it a little bit of a discount relative to a white pager, and $4,500, pretty decent deal there if you can live with the page quality difference. There's been a lot of Ghost Rider key issues that have come up on eBay lately. I don't know if there's any news related to Ghost Rider that they're bringing him back or what, but I just noticed that there were several big-time Ghost Rider books that sold here recently. His origin and first appearance book is Marvel Spotlight number 5. Great cover. And this was an off-white to white page 8.0. And that one sold for $26.50 in a buy it now. But the more interesting sale was this one. This was a 9.8 for Ghost Rider number 1 from 1973. White pages as well. And this is, it's got a couple of minor first appearances in there. Son of Satan. And this is kind of, I think, the first solo comic related to Ghost Rider. Pretty well-known cover again. And this book has historically been fairly expensive from my memory. And so I was curious to see the GoCollect data versus this sale. Blizzard Comics is a pretty well-known eBay seller for CGC books. And they had this one at auction, 9.8 white pages, and it closed at $5,500. Now, I did pull up the GoCollect data. There are only 70 in a 9.8. And when you look at the closed data here, it peaked in present dollar value at $23,507. So this one has really come back down and is probably even below the trend line based on this last data point. But if you look at some of the other historic sales data, it shows you just how good of a price this was at $5,500 for a 9.8 with white pages, given, gosh, I mean, really all of the data. We've got 6,600, and that one was also a white pager. We had one at 7,200. That was in April. That was a white pager. $10,200 over at Heritage in January of this year. So January of this year, we're talking, let's call it about 9-10 months ago, one sold for almost double what it just sold for. So I feel like that $5,500 number is a borderline steal based on all of these data points. It's anywhere from, at the low end, 6,600, which admittedly is the most recent sale in June. But even dating back to November of last year, we've got $9,900. So it's a by far the lowest sales price in about 2 years now. And you could argue that was a borderline highway theft. So really great deal for somebody there for $5,500. Another one that I've always liked, and this is the first solo comic book for the Joker. This is the Joker #1 from 1975. Really great cover there that shows kind of like I don't know what you want to call them. It's basically the Hall of Villains. It's got all the villains together. You got Catwoman, Two-Face, Riddler, Penguin, and then Joker is ripping a Batman poster off, and it's Joker #1, 9/8 white pages. And I knew that this one was a bargain for the final sales price, because it's one I've always kind of tracked, and I was always kind of used to $1,000, $1,100 as the sales price. Admittedly, I hadn't looked at sales data in a while, but this one sold at $688, and I was like, I gotta believe that number is really low. And so I pulled up the GoCollect data for this one. There are 186 copies in a 9/8, so it's not terribly hard to find. 6% of all graded copies are a 9/8, but it's kind of right in line with where my expectations were mentally. $1,100, $1,041, $1,100, $1,400. There was one in August earlier this year that sold at $875, another one at $1,500, $700. So this is certainly the lowest sales price in a while for a 9/8 for Joker #1. So another really good deal there. And again, that's kind of the thesis right at the beginning of this video, is that depending on timing, just people are not looking at that auction, or maybe money's tight or whatever it is. There's just certain books that fall under the radar, and this is definitely one that did. I actually had it on my watch list. I wasn't planning on bidding on it, but I did have it on my watch list just to get an idea of where this one ended up, because it is one that I wouldn't mind having as part of my Batman collection. Another Batman book. This is Batman Adventures #12, but this is the newsstand edition, and this was in a 9/6. We just covered the 9/8 for Batman Adventures 12 in the last episode, I believe, and the 9/8 direct edition is kind of going in that $1,500 range. And this was a 9/6 newsstand, and that one sold for $10.50. And in a 9/8 for the newsstand, it's, I would think, about 2.5x this number, so 2,500 plus, if not even higher than that. For a while there, a newsstand, when all the Harley Quinn, rumors were heating up for the Joker sequel was Joaquin Phoenix, and it became known that Lady Gaga was going to play Harley Quinn. That book really shot up. It went up to like 4,800 for a newsstand. And obviously the rest is history. The movie was apparently god-awful. I did not even bother going to see it. I still haven't seen the first one, which I've heard is very good, but I haven't seen either one of them. But it was not a very well-received sequel. And as a result, a lot of Harley Quinn books have really dropped off the face of the earth. And this is, without exception, one of those. So this is a pretty decent deal, though, at $10.50. I mean, you're getting it for about $500 less than a 9/8 direct edition, and it's a very nice newsstand. Those newsstands from the 1990s are a little tougher to find. Very nice book for $10.50 there. Some Star Wars books. We had another data point for Star Wars #1 in a 9/8, and this one kind of bucked the trend that we've seen lately, where it's been kind of creeping down, 25, 24. We even saw some in the 2,200 and change type of price. Well, this one did sell for $26.50. Very well centered. It did have some bleed through on the logo as well. Not much, but just a little bit on that S for the Star Wars logo. But $26.50, that's a healthy number. That's a lot higher than where we've been seeing it lately. I do think, if I'm on the hunt for a 9/8 for Star Wars #1, I would try to stay below that $2,300, $2,400 number and into the $2,200 numbers. There's been enough data points lately where I think $2,200 to $2,300 is probably about as high as you need to go, just because it comes up so regularly right now on eBay. We had a 9/6 newsstand for Star Wars #42, the first appearance of Boba Fett and Yoda in Standard Comics, and this one sold in an auction for $390. Not a bad deal at all there, given that the newsstand can go in that $800 to $900 range. So let's call that about 2.5 times what the 9/6 goes for. That's a perfectly great copy. Very, very budget-friendly copy relative to the 9/8, and I'd be perfectly happy with a 9/6 myself. So that might be on the schedule for sometime this fall. Next up, we had a newsstand edition for Heir to the Empire #1. This is another book that is in free fall. This Heir to the Empire newsstand sold in a best offer accepted of $600. Last year, this was going for about $900 to $1,000, so about a 30 to 40% drop in Heir to the Empire #1, and really it just speaks volumes to how poorly Grand Admiral Thrawn was received from the Ahsoka series, and myself included. I have to admit it. I understand that he had to be older, just given the timeline for where it was in the storyline canon. But I just felt like he was underwhelming. I just, he was a great voice actor. I get it. But I don't think that Lars Mikkelsen's portrayal in live action was much to write home about. It just was not in my opinion, it was not a great translation of his diabolical, tactical mind that you see in the books. I just didn't feel that from his portrayal in the Ahsoka season 1, but that's just me. But clearly I'm not in the minority there, given that this book has literally just dropped off the face of the earth in terms of price. Another one we haven't talked about in a while, Kodor #9, the first full appearance of Revan. Great cover there. That one sold for $600. Pretty healthy sales price there. This one had gotten down into the, I'd say, 500 range. If you're lucky, maybe in an auction you get it below 500, but this one did sell at $600. That's a really great modern Star Wars key in a 9.8 that really displays nicely. I love that cover. Some G.I. Joe books. All right, we got some interesting sales for G.I. Joe #1. And I've got this one that was a direct edition 9.8 that was listed for $850. It sold for $800. But both the direct and the newsstands are all over the map right now, and we'll get to the newsstand in a second. But for the direct edition, this one again was a best offer accepted of $800. I found 3 other recent data points: $740, $900, and $900. So the range is $740 to $900. That's a pretty wide range percentage-wise for a direct edition, but this book does seem to have a little bit of heat with it lately. And here was one signed by Stan Lee. I gulped when I saw this sales price. It was Herb Tripe and Stan Lee Signature Series 9.8 Direct Edition, and it sold for $28.88. That is a huge premium for their signatures. It's certainly awesome, but to me, those two names don't really scream G.I. Joe to me. I mean, I think it would be cool to have... There's always cool to have a Stan Lee signed book, don't get me wrong. And I know it's Marvel Comics, but it is a weird combo to me to have it on a G.I. Joe book. And for $28.88, that is a massive number. That's way higher than I would have expected. But the more interesting sale was this newsstand. It was in an auction. A newsstand 9.8 for G.I. Joe sold for $18.25. And I was like, what? That is well above fair market value. In my mind, I was thinking $1,000, $1,100 maybe, somewhere in that ballpark. That's where it's been going for in my mind. So I did check it again, but this is an auction from a very trusted seller, All Things Comic Shop. I bought from this seller many times, and I was just blown away by this number. And here we are. So there was an old case CGC 9.8 newsstand that sold for, and this was about 5 days later, that sold for $810 in an auction. We had this one that we just covered that sold for $18.25, and then the rest of the sales were all kind of in line with where they are in my mind. $1,000 auction, $970 fixed price. We had an off-white to white pager that sold for $1036 in an auction. We had a 9.8 white pager that sold for $1,300 in a fixed price. So other than maybe that $1,300 number, which is a little high as well, most of them have been in that $1,000 to $1,100 range. So I have no idea why this one went for $18.25. It makes no sense to me. It was a beautiful copy. I'm not trying to say it's not. It was freshly graded and all that, but it's not an $1,800 book. This is $1,100, maybe $1,200 tops to me. But man, that is just crazy how that goes sometimes. Two people, it takes two to tango, right? So two people put in nuclear bids for whatever reason, or they mistyped the number in. I don't know. Next up, we're going to finish things off with some ASM books, including some GoCollect data. So we've got a newsstand for ASM number 238, White Pager 9.8. It did have a miswrap, as you can see right there, going from top to bottom. So that kept the price down just a little bit, but it's still sold within about where this book has been selling for a 9.8 newsstand, $13.65. And I've seen some other data points right around that number. So I think if I'm going to spend that, it's fine. But I would wait for one that with a better wrap. This one had a little bit of a miswrap to it, which some people don't care about. For me personally, it would bug me to no end to drop $13.65 on a book and have that miswrap on there. And then we've got some more data points for ASM 300. And this was an interesting one. This was a buy it now for $22.99, which is a solid $22.99, so $2,300, which is a solid $100 less than where the last one sold on eBay. So this was a beautiful direct edition ASM 300. And you can see why, because a lot of these were cut with like a blunt knife as part of the cut process for the book. And that is one thing, when I was actively looking really hard for this book, I was really hunting for one that did not have these kind of almost tears along the front of the book. And it happens a lot with this book. It happens a lot with Hulk 340 as well. The Hulk 340, usually with a newsstand, you see this issue where the cutting machine that was used was blunt, and it just caused a lot of these tears. And my personal opinion is that CGC should not give a 9.8 for this, in my opinion. I know it's done at the factory, but how do you know for sure that it was at the factory? And they let it go. They let it go. But the seller was kind enough to show these really noticeable and bad tears. And they even showed, some of the book is starting to pull up from the binding. So how this got a 9.8, it's a fresh 9.8 as well. It's got a fairly recent serial number. How this got a 9.8, I don't know. But that's what they do. They don't ding the book for the blunt cut to the cover. And it's, again, a very common problem with ASM 300 and then with Hulk 340 newsstands especially. So just note that when you're looking at these and you see it's a $2,300 sale, it's like, wow, that seems low. Well, the reason why is because of these issues, which are very noted, by the way. It's very common knowledge for a lot of comic collectors that they do that. But it's just incredible to me that CGC gives those 9.8s. And then here was a 9.6 newsstand. And to me, this is the right grade if you're going to get a newsstand ASM 300, because the multiple you've got to pay to go from a 9.6 newsstand to a 9.8 newsstand is so incredible that I just don't think it makes sense from an investment perspective. If you got the money, then do whatever you want to do. I'm just saying, for me personally, I'm not spending the multiple. And I wanted to show that to you here. So this is the newsstand data on GoCollect for ASM 300. And if you look at the 30-day moving average for a 9.6, it's $1,500. This one just sold for $1,452, so it's even less than that for the 30-day moving average. But look at the 30-day moving average for the 9.8. It's $7,200. Now, it's because there are obviously fewer in a 9.8, but it's not that uncommon. It's you can find a 9.8 ASM 300 newsstand without too much trouble. I mean, with a bare minimum of effort, you could find one. I bet it would take you less than 3 or 4 months to find one at a suitable price. But the multiple you got to pay going from a 9.6 to a 9.8 makes zero sense to me. What is that? It's almost, looks like it's about 3.5 times the price to go from a 9.6 to a 9.8. And I personally would not pay that difference. Now, if the 9.8 continues to drop, which it has been doing, I mean, it was consistently over $10,000, $12,000, and it's been slowly working its way down. The 30 days at $7,200. Now, let's say it gets into that 4,500 range. Then it might make sense, because you're talking about 2.5x what a 9.6 goes for, at least right now. Now, the 9.6 is going to continue to come down if the 9.8 comes down. So, me personally, I just don't think it makes sense to pay up for a 9.8 newsstand, just given that massive price difference. But that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, you might have a different opinion on that. But I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales for CGC Graded Comics. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.